No, apparently. Okay, so we are back live after our break. It is 2:15 p.m. and we are finishing up with the infrastructure and operations and facilities. So please go ahead, Director.
Thank you. Can we just go to the next slide?
Oh, sorry, this is capital. We're into capital.
We're into capital.
My apologies.
Yeah. So in 2023, we're looking at some bridge and culvert work, $830,000 worth. Further down, we explain which bridges and culverts they are. There's the Kidd Road North Bridge, which was designed by Greer Galloway, is in the final stages of getting approvals through CRCA, and then some work to be done to the Covey Bridge. It's I'll speak to it later. In buildings and facilities, we have $2.9 million worth of work, with $2 million being the new fire station at 32 and 15, and then $917,000 worth of work that comes directly out of citywide. In the fleet machinery and equipment, we have a total of 1.63. This includes all of the fire, the planning and development department, as well as operations for the facilities. And then park and land improvements, 1.195 in total. 1.1 million is the in addition for the Ivy Lee Wharf. And for that one as well, there is a dock proposed for Rockport for the boat ramp. In the road network, 891,000, and we'll explain what's involved in those as we go forward. So in addition to new proposed capital, we have some carry forward projects. So projects completed are expected to be completed by year end. So that's $2.9 million. Projects requiring carry forward budget, 754,000. Projects requiring carry forward budget and new additional, $2 million budget with an estimated carry forward of 1.4. So included in this list of projects, there's the design and build of the new fire station at Sealy's Bay. There's 154,000 remaining after the design has been completed in the acquisition of the land. And then looking at $2 million for 2023 and an additional $2 million for 2024 to complete the project. We estimate it's going to be a $4 million project at this point with current dollar figures. I did have a conversation with the designers this morning, and we're going to have a conversation about, what the anticipated costs are with what they've provided us, and then break down some of the components so we can look at that going forward. The Ivy Lee Wharf, $1.2 million of carry forward with an additional proposed 1.1 million. Total expected cost of this project at the end is $2.6 million as previously provided. That includes the acquisition of the land across the road for parking, all of the design and approvals, the construction and contract administration. 1233 Prince office building, $158,000 in carry forward. I believe that includes the grant, if I'm not mistaken.
Director, I have a question here as well. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
And I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah, no,
If I was following along in my budget document page here,
Yep.
proposal, are some of those pages aren't one for one here, I'm assuming.
They're not, no.
Okay, so these pages, a couple of them there belong in this presentation alone.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe this one does. if I'm
That's
not
good,
mistaken.
because
This one,
I'm looking, but I didn't see. Thank you.
and I'm sort of paraphrasing, knowing the overall project, so the numbers that are on this page don't align exactly, but it is all completely laid out in the budget document.
Page 77.
And this is a summary of all this. Yeah.
So if we're looking to correspond, it's page 77. This is the high level. I should have that as well, just because this is what was published. So if anybody's following along with us, page 77 is the more specific data. This slide that you're seeing on the screen is more high level, grouping some of this together. Okay.
Okay.
76. So, but it's page 77 of the budget document that was circulated. Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. 1233 Prince Street Office Building. We do have a grant for accessibility. I believe that it's on top of this. So we're looking at about $200,000. Within this project, we're looking at the beam work that needs to be completed. We're looking at the office renovations for additional capacity, as well as the accessibility, because not all of our access doors for the public are currently accessible. So with this project, all of those items will be addressed. Stormwater master plan and Lansdowne Village revitalization. Again, I've purposely held off on that project pending the results of the EA. I am looking at an RFP that I hope to have out in January to initiate this, and I'm hoping that the information from the EA will flow into this design as we move forward. So a little more detail under the bridges and culverts. We have the Covey Bridge. So Covey Bridge is at the about midway down the Red Horse Lake Road. Thank you. My apologies. This bridge was installed in 2015. When we initially looked at the OSIM inspections, it recommended replacement in 2025. However, the staff going out and having a look at the structure, it looks like there is a patina on the steel. It doesn't seem to be anything major. So our hope with this money is to be able to address that patina by cleaning it off and recoating it, and then also paving the approaches leading up to the bridge, because there's a significant amount of granular from the road that has made its way onto it, which will reduce its overall capacity. Kidd Road North, this structure, the deck has delaminated from the abutments, so it needs to be replaced. It has a really low rating, and we're hoping to get that one replaced in 2023 as well. So in the buildings and facilities on the next page, this is the entire complete list of capital for all of the facilities for 2023. This ranges from plumbing and electrical upgrades, HVAC, exterior walls, flooring, roofing, some additional electrical work, some wall. This is the full encompassing list of the facilities that need to be completed for that, what was provided in the document. Any questions on that page at all? I know it's a lot of information to take in.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just go back to the Kidd Road. Is there any desire to rehabilitate that road while the bridge is out? I know it had been talked about a while back. I know you've done some medial work.
So the
north of sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the Kidd Road at the location of the culvert. We anticipate with that making the structure wide enough for 2 lanes. So we'll be looking at the structure initially. Right now, that is a bit of a choke point where only one vehicle can pass over the bridge at a time.
Right. So
we will be widening that to accommodate 2 lanes of traffic. In addition to that, similar to what we had done to Russell Road in 2020, we recently just did some integral mixing of clear stone and put some granular on top of that to help tighten up the surface. But that one currently does not meet the threshold for an upgrade at this time.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. And the next slide. So with the facilities, new capital projects, obviously Station 2, the fire hall construction. Designs is moving along quite well. Very pleased with our consultant and what they've provided us to date. Next, we'll be getting approvals through planning and the Conservation Authority once we've nailed down what the footprint of this facility will look like. Site works, they're waiting on the survey to come in so that we can see what the topographical looks like and trying to utilize the site as best as possible. And then carry forward projects is the municipal beam work. I was corresponding with them today. They're waiting on they have provided me the drawings and we're ready to put out an RFQ to have the beams replaced and the remedial action completed. So the next slide, and this is what Councillor Jameson had requested earlier, and the Director of Finance had pointed out. So this annual estimate cost for each facility. This incorporates both the capital and operating requirements for our facilities. And it's the average for the next 2 terms of council. So we looked at 2 terms of council to see what those anticipated average costs will be per year. So you can see at the bottom of the page, the heat and hydro and insurance have all been incorporated as a separate item. And then the maintenance and upkeep is the first average for a grand total of about $1.1 million on average per year for the next 8 years. Okay. Capital fleet.
Mark does.
Oh, that would be page 86,
Page 84 is actually a detail.
84. Sorry, are we still in building or are we at fleet now?
And so still,
Sorry, I have a question from Jameson, please.
Thank you, your worship. Just trying to be clear in my mind, because I went through all these papers and it's back to my question. This chart, annual estimated cost. Just want to be clear. If I'm looking at your slide, I'm also looking at 84, which is building and facilities total. The following lists the costs, including operating and capital by facility by year. That's page 84. And the bottom line there is 542,000. Oh, no, sorry. 1,044,000 for this coming year, right? Which doesn't quite correspond to what I'm seeing on the slide, but that's what's confusing me here now.
correct. So what we've provided on the screen is the average of the 8 years. You'll have your highs and lows. Obviously,
yeah,
we have to invest more some years than we do others. So instead of showing the peaks and valleys, this is just a high level average, what it adds up to over those 8 years.
And this is the total. This has got hydro in it. This has got somebody going through to make sure that they rattle the handle so the thing stops. All of that.
It's got hydro, insurance, and heat.
That-
But it's not 100%.
It's hydro, insurance, and heat.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, you got a hydro. Oh, okay. That's hydro, okay. Insurance and heat, that's,
This is the 8 years, and then we took that average.
And
over
got it
those
down.
And put it, the average
Oh.
in here, and then estimated hydro, insurance, and heat to give a total annual cost.
okay, now, of course, what I'm looking for is operate maintenance. Annual maintenance,
So these do include some, like this is from citywide, so some of it will be operating, some of it will be capital.
That's full life cycle costing on that page. That's your capital investment that's required as well as your operating expenses.
so at this moment, I couldn't look at this book and get one figure for what it costs to run Centennial Hall all in
Well, this is as close as we've got
so
so far.
far, but
There's work that probably
that
should
can be,
incorporated.
okay. You see, what I'm looking for is at some point is that nut that's got to get cracked every year. So when you say to somebody, well, it's already paid for, they say to you, it's already paid for. Well, this is how much it costs every single day on average to keep it
These
going.
are the biggest components, but this doesn't necessarily take into account other
Maintenance, somebody coming in to
janitorial.
janitorial, right, all of that. Okay. So maybe we can get there from here someday. I mean, because I
Further
think
refinement.
I think we're going to need to know that in order to communicate that. That's my concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along.
Anything else for facilities? No? Okay, so capital fleet,
So page 86 now.
when I started here in 2020, the director of operations had a vehicle. We hired a manager of roads, so I passed my vehicle to the manager of roads. Manager of roads got a new vehicle, so that truck went to the facilities operator. What we're finding now is that the director of operations truck does not suit the facilities operator. And I anticipate with the private lane requirements for this year going forward, as well as the capital projects, that I'm going to need a vehicle to drive around. There's no question about it. And the easiest way to deal with that is to pull that one back and then acquire the proper vehicle for the facilities operator, who needs to carry ladders and all the parts and equipment required to maintain our facilities. So that's why that one is included in there. 3/4 ton truck with plow and sander is to replace one. This is just out of citywide, a full replacement. The 3-ton truck is as well. So the tandem axle dump truck, that one we included in here. We did not include a dollar figure in the capital budget. And the purpose is right now we're looking at 14 to 16 months for receipt of vehicles as a result of turnaround. And I'm sure Councillor Fody can appreciate that given his industry. So our hope is with the need for that vehicle in 2024 is to be able to tender for it in 2023 to receive it in 2024. So that's the lead time that we feel is going to be required. So that's why we included it in here. Wheel loader, our current wheel loader is 20 years old, and I'm hoping to actually keep it. What we have right now, it is in decent shape. We've invested some money into this unit. We have John Deere coming in annually doing assessments, doing repairs as required, and it's a fairly good machine. However, we do not have the capacity for the operations that we're running right now. We have a yard up in the north and we have a yard down here. So we've been taking this existing loader and moving it up to the north and then renting a loader for the winter. And we feel that we could move this loader up to the north and have it up there and then acquire a loader for here, which would be more cost effective than renting one every year. We still need 2 loaders, and this is the most economical way to be able to achieve that. And having looked at it, having had mechanics look at it, they feel that it's a decent piece of equipment that'll last us for some time longer with the amount of usage required up there. Which one?
Can you use your microphone just so that everybody can hear you?
Would that be new or used, Dave, or lightly used or brand new?
For the loader that we're looking for,
Yes.
that would be new. We are hoping that we can acquire it through the LAS program, where we would see the benefit of the reduced rates. So they do the pre-competitive, the pre-procurement has already been completed. And we see the reductions over what the MSRP is for those vehicles, which is greatly reduced compared to what a used unit would be in this current market.
I'm way out of my elements here, but is there ever any use or sense in looking at good quality used equipment in the world?
And that's what
Ritchie Brothers.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Right now, the used market is so it's a shortage of equipment, and the costs have escalated so highly that for a municipality, it doesn't make sense to acquire a used unit. It's a piece of equipment that we will keep for the next 20 years. And the value is there for us to own that instead of leasing it even for 5 months, which we have been doing.
Councillor maybe has a question, then Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through the operations director. How much was the rental per year for that loader?
Currently, the loader that we have is $6,000 a month for 5 months. So we're paying $30,000 per year to have that. So if you calculate that over the next 20 years, which this unit would last, we're paying $600,000.
Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Worship. Just for the record, I do believe the loader that we have here in question was purchased used at the time.
Thank you. Councillor Fody has a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just clarification, the tandem axle dump truck you need to replace, is that the one we refer to as the yellow one?
Yes.
Is it the most aged you're referring to?
Yes, the yellow number 12 unit that we're looking to replace at this time is a 2012 and was identified in citywide as being at the end of its useful life.
And I concur with what you're saying about equipment. We're in the business of moving it and they're screaming to get the new stuff up. Everything is still about 1.5 years behind everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last item on here was the boat for planning and development. This is in addition, the money was budgeted in 2022. And we found that the funds were insufficient. So we're just adding more funds for 2023 for planning and development to acquire the boat. And then carry forward projects, diesel plate packer, another unit that we have rented for the entire season. The cost to purchase one is about $20,000. We couldn't find them in 2022 because they have diesel engines and you couldn't find anything with a diesel engine. They're now coming available, and the rental rate on those, it would pay for itself within the first 2 years. That's fleet.
Is the chief coming forward to deal with fire fleet? Okay.
As discussed earlier, our engine 40, or sorry, our engine 20, changed those numbers around a little bit. So I keep having to go back and forth. Our engine 20 that sits in Sealy's Bay currently, it's due for replacement by 2024. As the operations director said, timelines on these vary. If we're able to get early on in January, we'll try to go for looking to see if we can get something as a demo as we did with engine 40. They're looking at 800,000 for that. As a matter of fact, I just got a Facebook message that City of Cobourg just okayed one for 1.1 million because they've had to wait longer, and they're looking at that coming out in 24 to 25. So if the ability to get a demo unit such as we did last time through the LAS program, as Director of Operations said, that's how we got the last pumper, and it seemed to work very well. And if we can look at getting that ordered early on in 2023, that will be what we'll be coming back to council with. With that, thermal imaging cameras that were not replaced, or we did not get through the purchases in 2022. That was in for 10,000. We're looking to try to carry that forward. The other things we have are $30,000 in hose replacement. Lots of our hose was purchased back in the early 2000s. It's all rubber, and I'm looking to slowly replace it truck by truck. And at $1,000 a piece for 4-inch high vol, it doesn't take very long to get to $30,000. So we're looking to try to do this a bit at a time, just so it doesn't hurt quite so much. Our bunker gear, $35,000 bunker gear replacement. As we discussed last year, we're doing 10 sets at a time, just to offset that, so we don't have a 60 set group come in every 10 years. Trying to replace these as we need to and increase. And with new firefighters coming on, we'll have to start replacing that as we go and increasing that.
Through you, your worship, and for both operations and fire, when we replace our lighter vehicles, or half tons or 3/4 ton, should we be thinking, or are we thinking about EV vehicles or hybrids in that? Is that something that we should, we have these vehicles, I don't know, 5 years, whatever we have them. Should we be leaning that way? Would they work? Would they have the facility to plug them in here and charge them up? Or is it not a particularly great idea? Or do we need some thought on that one?
So with the site works, one thing that I forgot to speak to was the fact that we are including EV charging stations. We're looking to add those facilities both for the public and for the staff as well. Currently, I can speak to the cost of half tons as an example. I think a half ton EV truck right now is about $100,000 to $120,000. Where we're acquiring them for about half the cost. So it's that balance.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we are looking to put the infrastructure in place to be ready for it right now.
Thank you for the question. I've got Council Fody, then Councilor Maybe.
Thank you, your worship. Through you, just as an FYI, our neighbors to the north here in Rideau Lakes had their new equipment that was bought through insurance, and because the Portland fire was on display down at the international plowing match. And they refer to it as a rescue truck, is fully electric end to end. The tools in it, the truck itself, it's totally electric. So my point is, we have a neighbor we can keep an eye on to see how they see the lifespan and how it pans out for them. And geographically, they're much larger than we are.
Through your worship, the tools on the truck are electric, but the truck itself is not electric. It's a commercial pump, a Freightliner truck. It's a gas engine truck or diesel engine
The
truck.
sales pitch I was given by, I won't name the firefighter, mostly because I didn't know his name, was not factual then. Thank you.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Maybe.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wondering, with the duration of picking up equipment nowadays and the asset management working maybe at the capacity it is and even better as the years go on, could the RFPs for these particular pieces of equipment be going out 2-3 years before we need them to get the vehicle that we really would like to have, instead of going for a model that's sitting on the shelf that's just a sample model and maybe not built to our standard?
Through your worship, as far as fire service goes, absolutely. I'm just trying to play catch up currently. I'll be coming to you. I'll be standing here for the next 5 years with lots of trucks to come. Unfortunately, because all of our tankers are starting to come up to their 25-year. All of our smaller tankers, there really hasn't been a lot of replacement over the last few years. So we're playing catch up kind of as quickly as we can.
The only caution I would say is that I would imagine that the treasurer would want to speak to this, but I don't think we can put off. If we enter into a contract for something, it has to be in that year, that calendar year for budget. I know it can be debentured at a later date, but technically we're on the hook for the money in that year that it's purchased.
Through your worship. So as we develop the asset management plan, we could start looking at multi-year capital budgets so that we could bring, especially for the type of vehicles that do need to be planned out and ordered that much ahead of time. I still, in the financial plan, I show it when I think we're gonna need the money. I won't show it when we that it gets a little more complicated, because I would show it in the financial plan when we actually need to have the funds available, not when council hasn't necessarily approved it then, but we could start to look at some multi-year budgeting so that council could start to see what we're going to need and make sure we can procure it in the best way we can.
Thank you for the clarity. Okay, so fire fleet, are you done? Fire fleet is done. Any questions before he? Yeah, okay. Next. Parklands and improvements.
So parks and land improvements, we have 4 projects included in here. The first one is the Ivy Lee Wharf. It's an additional $1.1 million on top of what had been previously budgeted for our expected complete project costing. The Rockport boat ramp, we had put a temporary dock out this year and we received mixed reviews on that, I think is the safe thing to say. We're looking to construct something more permanent that will work with all users. Haskins Point swim area and the Sealy's Bay project. We're looking there for some paving at the end of the cul-de-sac where the park is, and then exploring a standalone washroom facility similar to what the park, like Ontario Parks, would have. And then additional new budget for the Centennial Park gazebo. When we had put out an RFQ, we found that we were about 50% shy on what our anticipated budget was. So that's what we've included to be able to complete that project. So then the next slide is just a recap of all of those things, in addition to the wetland viewing platform, which I have currently received 2 quotations from engineers for completing the design. This will require CRCA permitting, geotechnical design, as well as contract administration and construction. So we're hopeful that by the time we're able to do some in-water work, that this will be ready to go and we'll have it completed this fall.
Just as another addition to that, part of this is funded by community dollars raised through the Lyndhurst group, correct?
Yes, through money raised as well as through a grant that we received.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Next one is road network. So we have a couple roads on this list that fall within a village boundary. So Birches Lane and Old River Road West. The program looks, when Citywide looks at a road, it looks at replacing like for like. my personal opinion, and it's up for council to make this decision, that I think that we should be looking at an urban cross-section or a semi-urban cross-section when we're in the village boundaries. So I had adjusted the numbers on this to more for design. We have money available in the contingency if council decides that we should be replacing like for like. But I think that would be, personally, I think that would be short-sighted, given that these roads that we're building are for the next 50 years. We have had concerns with pedestrians. I've received a lot of feedback that pedestrians don't feel safe walking on the road. There isn't a visual cue to tell you that you're entering into a village. So people driving down Old River Road, they maintain the same habit outside of the village portion that they do in the village portion. In addition to this, we should be promoting pedestrians. We should be promoting, walking access and cycling access, and the current configuration of what we have in Rockport doesn't allow for that. So we should be looking at walking loops, looking at the main street in Rockport and how it ties into Birches Lane, how it ties into the road, the Rockport Escott Road, and future parking for the boats and all those different types of things.
If you're, when we're looking at Birches Lane here, are you defining that, splitting it at the Parkway? Or because Birches Lane sort of has a vagary and entitlement going to the south. So are you looking at the northern section there or both?
With the amount of money that's been put here, I think that we have an opportunity to look at the village as a whole. When we engage an engineer, we can do $75,000 worth of work to those two roads, or you can take $75,000 and look at the village as a whole, have them design it and see how it all ties in together. And I think the long-term benefit of that would be that we'd have something that actually makes sense and ties in together and gives you that sense that you're in the village.
Just a word of caution. We did a study with a lot of public input, a lot of it misunderstood. And if we were to crack that egg again, which would be the perception of many, that I'm not sure that we are going to arrive at a consensus again. There was never a consensus in the first place. What is useful is a discussion we had concerning, and I'll call it the north side of the Parkway. In other words, in the more residential section of the village. And I thought that would be very useful, as you pointed out here. But just a word of caution, if you're going to open up that can of worms to the south, and let us not forget that we have the condominium development going on in there, which will disrupt everything for 2-3 years probably.
Yes.
Right.
And this would be more of a longer term project as well,
Sure.
Looking at the design and having the public input with something like that, whether it is just the north end or it is all inclusive.
Okay.
And we had done the test this year of separating the parking with the boat ramp, and it seems successful once we put our no parking signs on the Jersey barriers and people understood that was no longer a parking facility. So I think there's an opportunity to look at those types of things. We had included in the budget for this year as well, some more permanent parking like blocks, some planters and those types of things that are more appealing, but still provide the same sort of separation. So just those types of thoughts, I think moving forward, the amount of money in here could rebuild the roads like for like, but could also be used for design if that's what council feels should be done. The remainder of the work in here, Island View, Kid Road South, Tumble Down, those are all microsurfacing. They're preventive maintenance. LaRue Mills, Kais Road, Fairfax, and Cliff Road are all seal coats. So that's preservation of our surface treated roads. Red Horse Lake Road, we had some money in the budget for 2022. We found that it was insufficient for what we were looking to do in terms of asphalt. So we have included additional funds in 2023. Looking at Red Horse, we have some challenges as well further down the road. Once you crest the hill and you start heading down towards the river, and we have to do some ditching. And then we have an intersection with Jonah Street where nobody really knows where the intersection starts and ends. You could land a helicopter on the intersection. So I think, some of this money could be reallocated to addressing some of those issues as well. And that's roads.
Questions? Councillor Fody?
With regards to the dollars assessed to various roads, it's easy to understand what's going on here. My question I've been hit with more than any other year yet this past summer and currently is the condition of the gravel roads and the infrequency of a road grader. I know that I'm not the only member sitting at this table hearing the same story. I don't know how we address this. We have 2 road graders and I think their frequency is lacking. And a classic example right now is the condition of most of the regional around here. I have not toured to the north and the northeast. Most of the gravel roads around here were in poor condition up until freeze up here just a week or so ago. Now they're covered in snow and appear to be covered in a lot more snow soon. The good news for those of us on the gravel roads, the potholes will be a lot smoother now. They're going to be full of packed snow. So that's in essence what we call white pavement, those of us living on the gravel roads. For the winter months, we have pretty good roads because the snowplows give us our white pavement. But I think we need to take a serious look at the frequency of road grading in our township from this point forward. We're okaying some pretty massive budgets here for hardtop roads. And I think the gravel roads are being set aside at the expense of these. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that? And then I'll take Councillor Lackey's.
Thank you, through your worship. I agree. Grading gravel roads, it's a fine balance. Grading gravel roads and maintaining the surface. We have a 3-year program on gravel roads, where most municipalities have a 1-year program where they're regrading or regraveling the roads every year, and we're stretching it out to 3 years. I can understand why, the cost of maintaining 162 kilometers of gravel road is quite high. But it's at the same time, we have that balance where once we've done our gravel resurfacing and we put down the calcium chloride, the best thing for a gravel road is to leave it, because the more often that we break that surface and it rains on it, it dilutes the calcium and the magnesium that we put on those roads, so that by the end of the year, if we've graded it 10 times, there's hardly any calcium or magnesium left. That's the challenge that we have currently is, our gravel programs are maybe stretched a little further than they should be. And then, we're out there trying to make up for it by grading it all the time and pulling the concentration of magnesium and calcium out of the roads as a result of that. So it's a challenge that we have currently.
Just to follow up. If I may.
Yep, go ahead.
That being said, for those of us on these gravel roads that have some significant washout spots, those situations happened shortly after they were surface treated this year with the calcium. I'm wondering if we can't just go along and regrade those portions. And I would volunteer to retrofit that expensive little shiny tank that was purchased on the township behalf unknowingly here, and just put a 6 foot, I'm talking about the septic tank purchase. If you're looking for which tank, I just think that we could mitigate it and put a tag along behind one of the trucks on that little tanker. It only holds, 1,000 gallons or something. It's like, I doubt it's that large, but you could put a spillway on the back of that. It's been done with previous. That's how they did it back in the day with their township trucks. I would like to see something like that tried. And just as you say, if you have to regrade these washouts, I know Thomas Road experienced that, and there's countless others. I would like to see them dealt with during washout. I didn't realize my own road was as bad as it was on certain washout spots until I got invited by a neighbor at the far end to have a look. And they were absolutely right. It was terrible. And I just think we need to look at this. I know the understanding of not touching them after they've been surface treated. In theory, that's a great idea if it looks like the floor of this room. When it looks like some of those hills and it gets in the condition it is, not factual.
Yeah, in addition to not touching the surface, most of them do look like this room, where we have walls on the edge of the surface of the road where there should be ditches. And that's the number one thing that we have to do is continue our ditching programs, continuing our drainage maintenance programs in order to keep the water off. It's the water that gets into the base of the road that makes it soft, and traffic going over top of it will break it up, and that's how we end up with potholes. But I agree.
As you well know by now, a lot of the ditching issue isn't really a ditch, it's a granite rock. Right up the gravel road, the graders have to swing out the fear of getting jarred out of their seat. And, but it's just the nature of the beast of where we live and what we have to deal with.
Sorry, one thing that wasn't in the fleet that should have been, we had included a water tank to replace one of the water tanks in the back of our tandem. And the one that we're proposing has capabilities of carrying calcium chloride and magnesium chloride as well. Yeah.
Mr. Jameson and Mr. Lackey, and then Mr. Jameson.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, the director. Many years ago, we did a project with two of the roads. I can't remember one of them, but one of them was LaRue's Mills, where we put down limestone rather than the granular B or whatever, the basic half clay, half whatever. And it seemed to do fairly well. Would there be an appetite to do many more of our roads with limestone?
Through you, your worship, every road that we gravel resurface now is limestone. I personally do not believe in pit run. We will not be using pit run on our roads going forward because when it rains, it turns soggy and soft. And no, all of our roads have been resurfaced with granular. And it's been a combination of different types of treatments. When we get into some softer areas, we've been introducing either what they call a 2-inch here, or we've been using clear stone and mixing it in to try to get it to bond to the harder granular, and then adding a 5/8 limestone on top of that as well.
Do we compact it?
We static roll it with our graders. We don't have an actual roller compactor that we have for that purpose, but we have the static rollers in the back of our graders, which most municipalities don't. I was actually quite pleasantly surprised to see that we had those when I came here.
Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, your worship. I'd just like to go back and then I have a question going forward maybe. And that is back to the Haskins Point swim area and the Sealy's Bay project that is separate and distinct from the Centennial the gazebo. So just elaborate a bit more, or maybe you're having to say it again. I'm sorry. What exactly are you going to do in Haskins Point Road? I'm assuming it's at the loop.
Yes. So in Haskins Point at the loop, we're looking to pave the loop where it has been a maintenance nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Year after year. So we're hoping to pave that to address that issue, and then add a washroom facility for the summer months.
Okay, that went by me, and then that's what brought me back. 10 minutes later, I went, a bathroom facility in Haskins Point?
Yes.
Are you talking about a semi-permanent porta potty?
Yes, a semi-permanent porta potty that is a small facility that you plunk in place. It's not heated. It does not have water facilities. It's simply a holding tank that would have to be pumped out.
So you're upgrading you're moving up the chain a little bit in the
From the
without
rental.
the chain in the porta potty business. Okay.
Correct.
So will that be accessible?
That's a great
It will
question.
have to be an accessible toilet of some kind.
I would assume so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So since I caught you there, or I caught it going by me as coming back, I hope you will consider looking at a similar solution over in Lyndhurst.
So this would only be a summer months porta potty facility.
I know, but I'm thinking, yes, I'll leave that with you. The other question, are you going to touch on capital requests as we go forward? Is that after? It says I'm looking at page 91 in the big book. Is that going to be covered this afternoon?
We should
Yeah,
go
let's go
through
through
the
the financial.
plan. And then I think we need to go through the financial plan so that we can see the larger picture. And then we can come back to the additional requests, which are highlighted in green in everybody's binder. So if you were, for some reason you missed that, there was some additional projects that weren't included to be done for next year, but could be included, but would affect the tax rate. But I think that the treasurer would like to go through the financial plan to show the the transfers to reserves and what we're doing before we make decisions on. the
Okay,
additional-
so I'm just, the reason I'm asking your worship is okay, this is going to fall in the financial plan. The slides we're seeing for the first time, really.
Yes.
And I'm trying to relate it to this book that I spent far too many hours trying to plow through. So I'll leave it at that, but I do want to get into that, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the culverts over on Haskins Point Road by the, and the question I was going to ask, because it's in my notes somewhere. Is there a discussion on now about, with Parks Canada, about the paddle dock, that dock we don't own, no one owns, somebody must own it. Yeah, CRCA, right?
So there's an agreement with CRCA that I believe is out of date. But as the Director of Planning and Development has said, the CRCA is currently looking at what business they're going to be in moving forward. And additionally to that, which lands they should own and which ones they should relinquish. And this is one that I have met with a member of CRCA about whether this should be a CRCA facility or whether it should be a Township Leeds and Thousand Islands facility. Where the parking area is down to the paddle dock, there might be an opportunity there for the municipality to take that over. Nothing has been carved in stone yet. And, some opportunities that might come along with that as well.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, CRCA owns that parking lot and that whole stretch all the way around the corner.
That is correct. We own with the park to the tree line, and everything west of the tree line is CRCA.
Isn't that interesting? Okay.
Yeah.
No clue. That'll be interesting to take back. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just clarification. I missed which location you were talking about there in that discussion.
We're talking about the Centennial Park
Oh, Centennial Park.
off Haskins Point Road.
It's in behind the big building structure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go through this financial plan. I just want to bring everybody's attention. It is 3:00. Our hope is to be done by 4. And the reason I bring this up is because there is weather on its way. And I would hope if we can keep our discussions tight, then we can get the staff home. That's my biggest concern at this point. So please proceed.
Okay. Thank you, through your worship. So this slide here is actually the most important one to me of almost the whole budget. I mean, this is this in a nutshell is me trying to balance the financial plan. So the yellow line that's the line that goes through these bar graphs is our reserve fund balance, the total. So the reserve funds we do have set up by asset category, but when it comes to the financial plan, I looked at the total reserves as one, just trying to keep our total in a plus position so that we don't overdraw all of them. So in certain years, some of them, the pages I printed, there's some reserves that do end up getting overdrawn and others that don't, but for a long-term planning purpose, basically trying to keep that yellow line from going below 0 is all I'm trying to do. You can see in 2022, our annual capital requirements versus what we actually put to capital reserves. I mean, the way our township does it, we move all of the money from the operating budget, we put it into our capital reserve funds, then we pull it out of the capital reserve funds and we fund projects. Nothing wrong with that. Other townships I worked for, sometimes you just take the money from operating and fund capital pay as you go. So really what I'm trying to do in my mind for the financing is if we're looking at an annually, we need to have $4 to $5 million in capital work done. Then hopefully we're taking 4 or 5 million into operating every year and putting it to capital, whether we put it right in the reserve or we're just moving it over and funding capital, but like trying to have a 1-to-1 there. So we're not getting further and further behind. In my mind, I see debt used for the large projects, like building a new facility, a pumper truck that's almost $1 million. But typically if we know about replacement, we're planning ahead that hopefully we get these transfers to reserves so that these two, the green and the blue bars, start to become about the same level so that we're basically in the year paying for most of that capital work that needs to be done. And that's really to me what this budget is about. Like I know it's a significant increase in the capital transfers, but the whole goal was to keep the yellow line from going below zero. And that's really trying to get those transfers to a point where we're basically paying as we go. I'm not trying to build the reserves like to a big amount. Like, I think it would be great over time if we could build them up, because then if we do have a pumper truck, maybe we don't have to borrow it. But I don't think we're in that position yet. Down the road, maybe we will be in a better position to do that. But for now, I think these larger projects, it makes sense for us to borrow. But the cost of borrowing is going up too, and then that impacts the operating.
Go ahead.
Just thank you, and through your worship. For clarity, Kate, then this has no debt in it, or does that have debt associated in that diagram? And the reason I'm asking is the gray line in the page and the yellow line on the presentation, which are the same, to an untrained eye, it says that we are depleting ending capital reserve funds pretty substantially for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Is that?
I think it's just the colors. When I copied this table over, the colors, thanks a lot. The colors went with the presentation style, but it's actually the exact same, and it does not really take into account debt. The debt really gets taken into account because of the operating budget, because when we repay it, then we have to fund it through operating. And so what happens is, on the operating side, at the very bottom of the financial plan, I've calculated, based on the increases to the transfers to capital reserve funds and based on the debt payments, what the impact, which is, it's a really high estimated impact, is to the tax levy.
To the untrained, follow up. To the untrained eye, though, it would suggest that our reserves by 2027 have been pretty severely hit. It struck me as that was a pattern which we saw when we came on council in 2018. It makes me uncomfortable, although I can understand that we can only put so much money in transfer so much money into capital reserves. Is there an impact if we spread, and I know you addressed it here, some words about 8-year plan instead of a longer term plan? So to an untrained person, is there any, or what is the differential if you spread that instead of 8 years, you say, listen, we're going to take longer to make this sort of balance off? And that may be just a terrible question. What if we, what if we expanded beyond 8 years? And I understand it says right here that becomes very speculative. But if you're doing a financial plan and you said 12 years or 16 years or whatever, and therefore is it possible to reduce those transfers to capital, achieve what you want over a longer period of time?
Through you, your worship. So the spreadsheet I'm working on, I'm looking at between 30 and 50 years. So like to lower the transfers to the reserves, we'd probably have two options. We'd either have to look at the capital requirements over these 8 years and talk to Dave and Mike potentially to see, can we push this out? But what happens, unfortunately, is I think that's kind of why we're in the scenario we're in right now, is because we weren't probably doing some of the capital work to the facilities that we should have. And now we're trying to, I think, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're trying to get through a bit of a bottleneck as it relates to some work that maybe if we'd been kind of being a little bit more proactive and making sure we were keeping up on our plans, we wouldn't now be faced with this amount of work. The other thing we could do is borrow. But then the borrowing, instead of depleting our reserve funds like this, instead of trying to get the transfers, like we could borrow for some additional, but then we also have to take into account that then there's debt payments in the operating side that's actually going to push up the taxes too. So.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you're very comfortable with this is the way to go as opposed to what? As opposed to stretching it out, and I'm almost going to use the word deferral, modest deferrals of the capital requirement. That's what I'm not going to say it troubles me. We're being presented with some very large numbers, and we're being presented with consistent tax increases. And I'm just trying to make sure that we understand it and the public understands what we're trying to achieve here. I guess that's it. Thanks.
So through your worship, I think this is the best, this is my best estimate today. I think, like even 3 months into next year, when we know how much casino revenue we did get for next year's financial plan, hopefully the increase to the reserves maybe won't be as high as what I'm projecting right now, but I always base it on what I know for sure, right? So I'm trying to be as conservative as possible in my estimations, because I also can't foresee what happens to the capital
Right, you have
costs.
a crystal ball. One last question on that whole deal, because it affects our levy. And that is, has the province of Ontario ever in the last few months, I know they wouldn't say it before the election, have they actually ever considered what's going on with the MPAC reassessments in this province? Because it strikes me that I know a lot of homeowners and property owners are a little nervous because they're thinking one direction, which I don't think is going to happen in terms of, I don't think they're going to get whacked. So yes, has anybody had any indication what our Premier Ford and company are going to do with assessments? Because that has a pretty direct benefit, direct influence, not on the numbers on here, but where the money comes from.
Right.
Right.
Through your worship. So no, we met with MPAC last week and there's still no official word at all on when they're looking to do the reassessment or the assessment update. However, we are looking to bring representatives from MPAC to council for a training session to talk about assessment and then what does happen through an update to the assessment. And sorry, I forget the date already, Megan. It's Monday, January 16th.
January 16th. The MPAC. Sorry. So, okay, I'll take Councillor Jameson's question.
Just want to consider this 2027 ending capital reserve funds. The dip there looks pretty scary. So I'm just trying to figure out what the downside risk might be. Is there a regulatory down risk? Is at that point, is it default? Potential for default? Because that's really thin. So what's?
Yeah. So through you, your worship. So the way I look at this plan is I'm asking, like, I want you to see the plan and hopefully someday I can maybe even show you further out. But like, when I bring this back to you next year, I hope that 2027 line isn't that low. Like I hope between now and then I can figure out how, because I'm not comfortable with that either. So like the closer we get to 2027, if it still looks like that, then I'd be asking again to increase transfers to the reserves to provide us some more comfort there, because I agree. I tried to just kind of get us to a point right now where, because I know it is a high increase I'm asking for. So hopefully by the time we get to 2027, there's something else great happens that gives us some revenue somewhere else.
There's some luck and horseshoes associated with this budgeting process. Councillor Bodie.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Director of Finance. When I looked at this, it's obvious you're using the next 2 terms of council to put a window on this. Are you using the 2016 MPAC assessment all the way through this, not knowing what a new one or if a new one's going to be applied?
So through your worship, so I'm not really taking into account the assessment so much as looking at just on the capital side, how much revenue we're going to need, how much we think we're going to need to spend on capital, and then I have a very, very rough estimate of what I think that will do to the tax rate. But it's very like high level, just based on this year's kind of numbers, just to give us like a ballpark estimate. And again, each year when I bring this back, it'll hopefully provide better and better information and indicators as to the actual impact, but not really looking at the assessment update rate at this point.
A follow-up to you, your worship. We're not alone in this boat with MPAC. Has there been any pressure or any type been put on our MPP?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. I know that both Roma and Amo have been persistently pushing the minister, but it is actually a function of finance in the government. So anyways, honestly, whether it's politically correct or not, I'll say it. This is a bit of a shell game because when Councillor Gorell was saying something about, the fact that they need to do something because, they are the ones that need, it's all the same person that pays the taxes, whether we put the taxes up or MPAC changes the assessment. Right now, we're looking like the bad guys. But if they were to do a reassessment, obviously we can affect our tax rate up or down, and we can do all of that. So we can look like heroes, but the end result is still going to be a net increase to a taxpayer's bottom dollar, just the percentage we put on it one way or the other, the mill rate, and using an old term, which is our job. And that's why we're here. But I guess the difficulty that I'm having is that to me, it's a team sport.
Yeah.
MPAC is supposed to be on our team. We're supposed to work together. We're supposed to manage together, and they're supposed to use their tools to not blanket, but apply a fairness all the way around. And they've been absent from the table for 4 years. I understand COVID, whatever, but we had to still keep going. And in the light of inflation and the rising costs of everything, we're having to do this. However, if MPAC comes in with an assessment that it puts an increase in, we could have a negative tax increase at some point. Who knows? And that's where the crystal ball would be super helpful right now. So, but I think that the staff have done a great job to try to put this into perspective as best we can with the tools that we have at this moment. Go ahead, Councillor James.
And I'm glad you said out loud that we could actually adjust tax to a negative rate. The reason is that there are a lot of people I know are very worried about sort of the talk about impact and the change, and it upgraded. And to them, it just sounds like you guys are going to really put it to us. And that's what I'm hearing. So we're actually budgeting, I believe, on a reasonable need, and we can play with the numbers. And no matter what happens, it hasn't been a team sport for a long time, and it isn't going to be for a while. So I think we're just going to have to take care of our own people. Thank you.
But the other thing that I would like to say before you finalize your comments on the plan, part of this whole asset management process has really led our financial department as a whole, not just Kate, down a very productive path. We've become more efficient in how we manage things, how we pay things. All the processes that are in place to manage the day-to-day operations are pretty robust. And in doing so, I know that we managed our budget within a very slim margin last year. But if we continue to manage that as always in a positive, and I realize that there's some uncontrollable things, but not just could we count on a higher revenue from the casino to help build those reserves, but how we manage the money internally is just as important. So I just wanted to make that comment because, the $5,000 surplus that we had last year, it was 20 in total, but 15 was the library. That's pretty amazing to manage within that sort of spectrum. But if we can continue to do that, we're not going to fall any further behind, and kicking the can down the road never solves anything because it's just going to become more and more expensive. So I'll stop talking. Go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Thanks. Through you, I'm just going to quickly go through the rest of these slides. So I just broke down how I put the financial plan together. And then the next slide is kind of just a snapshot of what we are estimating right now that the funding is going to look like. So we're looking at $11 million in debt based on, again, what I know today, which could change over time. And just the final one is really, again, just in summary, this budget really is based on the increase to the capital transfers to try to balance that plan, to try to keep that yellow line from going in the hole. So I guess I just like to say the financial plan is really hard to present in a slideshow. I would invite anyone on council to please come see me or call me, and I'm happy to walk through it, pull the spreadsheet up on my screen and explain exactly how I've built it. I'd be more than happy to show anybody how it works. But it's difficult for me to kind of put it on a slide and try to explain it that way. There's a number of factors and assumptions, and it is an estimate, and it will change over time. It'll change. It could change 10 times between now and next year when I bring it back to you based on different information I receive or that we make in the asset management plan. And I did want to circle back to Councillor Jameson's question about the capital requests. So they're currently not in the budget. They're currently not in the financial plan. So, depending which, this is page, I can't read it, 91.
91.
If we add any of these back into if we add into any of these or anything else into the capital budget, that yellow line likely will go into the negative, but just to keep that in mind, it depending on the dollar value, it will kind of, what's the right word? Mess up my financial plan.
So she's not saying don't do it, but it will take other adjustments in the financial plan. Before we go any further though, my question before we get into the discussion, when you came back with one of the first slides today that the tax increase went from the original submission that went out to us was 6.5 and now it's down to 6. If we were to keep the 6.5, what is the dollar figure that would allow us to pick away at some of these things if we were to keep the 6.5?
So a 1% tax increase is about $110,000.
Nothing.
Well, but
Not enough.
it's something. That's why I wanted to ask the question. So anyways, go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, your worship, it's if it's being spent by a taxpayer, it's a lot. But if it's being spent by us against some of these numbers, it isn't very much. That was my point. But I do have a question with respect to page 91 and the capital requests. One quibble in my research, which I had to do for one of the community groups, I don't think it's $100,000 for the digital signs, but I'll argue with David later on that one. But the reality is that you got a figure of 1.1 million to rebuild. I'm assuming that's a complete rebuild of the Daria Road. Is that right? That's all in 1 year. That's spread over 10 years. What is it?
That would be the complete project from start to finish. That would be through you, your worship, that would be the ditching, the culvert replacement, the brushing, the graveling, the resurfacing or putting a surface on it, and also allowed for a 10% contingency on top of that.
Is that 1 year, 5 years?
Well, for me, this project, it's possible to reconstruct it in 1 year. I wouldn't recommend it because when you put a culvert in, you have differential settlement. It's a new culvert that you're introducing. You've never had the road there before. It's better to let the road sit for a year. So you put the culverts in, you do the ditching, you break the rock, you do all those types of things. There may be fill areas that we have to complete as well. So you let that material sit for a year and find its balance. And then you put the final coat on it the following year when it's sort of found its happy place.
Okay.
So I would say minimum 2 years.
So the question from me then is, you got $1.75 million in capital requests that are over and above the budget. So we either look at this and say, it isn't going to happen this year, or we get into this horse trading, which I don't think is a good idea. I think there's a lot of expectation, particularly on the Daria Road, that we're going to do something. But that's a big bite. So I just worry about the horse trading and the pushing back and forth against each other. Thank you.
So that may lead me into a further discussion then. Is there anything on this list that anybody on council feels has to be done next year and needs to? You just said.
The Daria Road.
Go ahead.
If you go down Daria Road, you're liable to think that it's a string of potholes that someone thought was a good idea to throw gravel at and call a road. And maybe in the days when there were 6 farmsteads down that road, it was sufficient in the horse and buggy days. But there's 35 families that live full-time on the lanes that run off Daria Road now. And there's 4 school buses that go in there. That road, it did pass your threshold, but Back Street was 295. The Dairy Road's 300. They're both, you probably know one of them better than the other.
Oh, and I'm not debating the need of this. By no means am I debating the need, but what has been presented to council at 6.5% originally, it has now come down to 6% because of the increased tax levy or the assessment. In order to, if we were to do all of these projects, it would be another 10-12% increase on top of that. So I'm just trying to put it into perspective for those who might be listening, that's the decision of council. And while I believe strongly that we have to look at our overall plan, I'm not giving up on the Daria Road project per se, but I would like to see it in the context of a fulsome road plan, which we cannot bring forward until we have the counts. And I don't want to use the turn of phrase, but this year it's going to get done. Come heck or high water. So because we had anticipated having it done, not having a student sort of bail on us and all the last minute wasn't intentional that it didn't get done, but it didn't get done. And so for us to make a decision in a whole context, and this is part of, to me, the asset management plan piece, is that we need to know what the road needs are on the surface treated roads as much as the gravel roads, as much so that we can balance it. Councillor Fody and then Councillor Jameson.
In large part, I agree with you, your worship. Through you, I should apologize. In large part, I agree with you. Daria Side Road, there's no question in my mind that road needs to be hard surfaced. It doesn't have to be done this year. If we went along with my theory of doubling up the frequency of road graders, it'll buy this year fine for us. There's no more potholes on Daria Side Road there is on Sand Bay. The lucky part for me, I don't have to drive the full extent of Sand Bay as some of my neighbors at the lake. So we don't have to do any of this. We can buy a little time, frequent the road graders on some of these gravel roads like Daria that are heavily traveled, and see where we fall here. We still have time. We're not on the edge of the cliff here, but I really, really want to hold back on increasing taxes any higher than where we stand right now. I think that's the crucible here is we're at that point. Thank you.
Okay, Jameson.
I agree with Councillor Fody. You're wrong about the Daria Road. We need to do it tomorrow. But I agree with you. I think the challenge that I see at Daria Road is an expectation has been created, however accurately, that something's going to be done almost immediately. And that's too bad. But on the other hand, I'm assuming that you have some measures in place to some mitigation with respect to that road when the season comes, because I know you do. Correct? Am I correct in that in terms
Correct.
of just right? But also in terms of a project of that magnitude, it's $1.1 million project, which will quickly become 1.2 million, should be staged. It's a long road, really, and that would be my recommendation and my defense when I go home. Is that it needs to be staged. It will be taken care of appropriately by a good team in place now. And let's not look back 15 years at what our beefs were. Let's take a look at
what's going ahead. So I support the notion that I think 6% is enough. 6% is way too much, but it's what we have to do. And I just want to say, because I'll probably forget, what a tremendous presentation staff put together. Very easy to understand, to the extent that it's scary when you understand it that quickly. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Counselor Gorell and then Counselor Maybe.
At the risk of jumping ahead, I'm not sure if we were done on the page, financial plan components, but I just wanted to leap ahead to the number 3 component, the debt projection, and page 97 from the white binder. And if I'm getting too far ahead, just let me know. But I would just, if I could have that explained to me, because what I see is, I'm going to call it the debt, and then I see the debt servicing fees. But right the top line, by year, which ties into the slide where it says 11.1 million in debt. Could we have a discussion? I can understand, or pardon me, that top line going across, starting at 2023, those numbers are your 11.1 million. The 2.6 from 2022 is not part of that debt. And I can clearly see the debt servicing fees, not a problem. So what is the debt for 2023, 24, and particularly what is 2030, the 3.5 million? There's a projection there that looks like it's Fire Station 4, but can we discuss this a little bit? Thank you.
Through your worship. So, yeah, and again, this is where it's sometimes easier if I could show you the whole spreadsheet, because this is snippets, but the line across the top is showing the amounts we're going to pull from individual years and propose to finance through debt. But the breakdown below then shows it by actual projects. So Ivy Leap here is 3.3. The Fire Station 2 is 5.2 of debt. And then the project that is we're looking at 2028 to 2030 is Fire Station 4, I believe. Right there? Yeah. Fire Station 4, a rebuild of Fire Station 4, that's what's coming up projected in those years. So that's another $5.2 million in debt to do that project.
Is this the first time that we've been presented with Fire Station number 4 being 5.2 million in debt?
It could very well could be. That's coming again out of citywide based on the age, condition, and risk. So again, this is why it's good to be able to provide you with the future of what we're looking at, because that's right now what we're looking at in terms of what the asset management program is telling us.
Do these numbers, I'd imagine they do they fall well within our
debt capacity?
Our capacity?
Yeah.
Our reduced capacity? And what is the 2.6 in 2022 in debt? And why isn't it included in the total program?
Yeah. Through your worship, I apologize. That might have been easier. Like everything I did was looking from 2023 forward, but in terms of this, it probably would have been easier if I would have included that. But that money is part of it's the fire station. A small part of it's the fire station, actually. I think 400,000.
That's right. It's about a 57 something split on that.
Well, yeah.
This building.
Sorry, no. 2022 was what we just approved though, which was Ivy Lee Wharf, the pumper truck, and I think $400,000 related to Fire Station 2 rebuild.
It's just partial amounts of those bills.
Yeah, it's partial amounts of those projects listed below that then we borrow for.
Some would be coming out of reserves to pay for it, and then the balance would debenture.
Well, because a lot of these projects are overlapping multiple years, right? So Ivy Leap Pier, we did budget, I think, $1 million already in 2022. So we're going to wait and fund the project when it's done. So the 2022 number has part of Ivy Lee project, I think $400,000 for purchase of land related to Sealy's Bay Fire Hall. And then I think $700,000 for a pumper truck for fire.
So 2023 at almost 4 million in debt is an additional Ivy Leap here, the pumper truck. Like, it just seems to me that overlaps tremendously. Am I missing something there?
But yeah, through your worship. So I can try to break that down and even summarize it in a separate email or whatever, just to reiterate how those numbers, because it is a bit confusing because there's multiple projects that run over multiple years. But when I go to borrow, I try to wait till the project's finished and I try to borrow for the entire project, because if it's a pumper truck that's 20 years, we would want to borrow over the 20 years, where if it's a fire station, hopefully it lasts longer. So I would borrow that over 30 years. So it is a little confusing.
We're not borrowing twice for the same stuff, which is what we're definitely not
no.
doing that.
Okay.
But it's a
But
good question.
then just, I guess, our debt assumed at the end of 2023 is 4 million odd, or is it 6.5 million? I'm still a little confused. How much debt are we looking at the end of 2023?
At the end of 2023, we'd be borrowing the 3.3 million. Because that's those are the projects that would be done then. And then the following year, we'd be borrowing another.
And some of it's the same project. I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Further questions in regards to the borrowing, since we're on that page? Okay, so we're going to go back to, we're back on page 91 in regards to the additional capital requests. So go ahead, Councillor Meady.
Sorry,
91.
91, I think they're back to.
So we're back talking about the additional capital requests. So I'm just going to take a couple more comments and then I'm going to pose something to the group. So
I think it was more of a general, couple questions. As much as we have the tax rate set at 6, we don't know what the education or county want yet, correct? And no speculation, no indication one way or the other, because that does change our bottom line. Is the only reason I'm asking that. Also, the Darien Side Road and to asset management, as I alluded to before, I see this all the time where you defer something and it becomes a larger cost to then repair it. And you have a lot more involved in trying to get it caught up. So the asset management plan that I believe we are entering here will give us the accurate dates that we really need to tackle these things. And yes, it's going to cost us money, but if we don't, it's going to cost us double the money sometimes.
just so you know, from a tax rate point of view, it's 140,000 for every 1%. Oh, never mind. And then the math's off. So, well, it's a 10% tax rate increase on top of 6% to get Darien Road done this year. Yeah. So this is the challenge that we're fighting, is that we've got things that have been left that have to be caught up, and adding this on top of it requires further investment and further maintenance going forward. Because that's the beauty of this asset management plan, is that once we make something a surface treated road, then it's not like we're just adding gravel to it anymore. We've got to surface treat it in order on a regular basis to maintain it, which therefore increases the cost to maintain said road. I'm assuming it's more expensive than a gravel road. So, and by no means, I don't think there's anybody around this table that would say that Darien doesn't need to get done. And we've got to figure out a way to manage this throughout the years. So I'll recognize Deputy Mayor Olkey.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering, the projections on page 90, how absolutely firm are those? You have 90, yes. You have roads contingency of $103,000. But all those other figures there, is there any overage planned into those? I'm just thinking there might be another way to look at this in terms of savings realized and then applied. Since the taxes have already been collected or the money already borrowed, whichever it is, if there could not be some aspect of the program where that could be applied.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship. I think there would, specifically with the roads, there's not a lot of extra fat on these. It's based on the unit rates from the year before, which we base this on, and it never goes lower. It usually increases. So they're pretty close. I think we were fairly close this year with those numbers. There are a couple items, one being the Kidd Road North culvert. That's not a big culvert. The engineers had provided that cost to us. So it's something like that. You know, the director of finance is pretty good at keeping me in line and making sure that I'm under budget and giving me all the numbers. So I think it's something that we can review and see if there is some capacity within those and come back to council. If we find that there is some, you know, additional funds available, then it's something that we can bring to your attention and see if there's something we should be doing.
And may I?
Yeah, please
And
go ahead.
There are things on a situation like whether it's Daria Road or some of our other roads. There are situations on those roads that could stand immediate improvement and would build towards the complete structure. And I think the perception that something is being done.
Well, and I have no doubt that the director will be including this on the regular maintenance program, but perhaps we could be a bit more present in the next year, if at all possible, to whether it's replacing culverts or what have you, to help with the drainage, if nothing else.
Once we have a sense of where we are financially, then I'll do a presentation to council. And if that's the will of council, then we can move forward.
So, go ahead, Councilor.
Excuse me to belabor the point about Daria Road. So, but I'm, you know, at the end of the day, some of these things on the list, you know, we can argue. I'm talking about on 91 again. And, you know, like the digital signs, quite frankly, should punt back to the community. Say you want them, pay for them. But as far as Daria Road goes, and in terms of finding savings other places, the way we've had washouts this last year and a half, it's really changed the game. My understanding, trying to read all the reports. So what I've gone away with listening earlier is that mitigate the challenge on Daria Road as much as possible with conventional approaches and the things you're doing, and not depend so much on 20 years of neglect, thriving opinion when it comes down the pipe, and it will. So I think that's really what the deputy mayor is looking for, some evidence that we're moving ahead. But at the same time, I think it should be staged, because that's an awful lot of money for us collectively to have to absorb in one hit. That's my concern there, even though I live up there. Maybe I'll have to move. I don't know.
Deputy Mayor.
Looking at our budget, it's obvious that Daria Road is not going to be a one-year project. It just isn't. See that? But I think the citizenry there would appreciate some movement.
Mhm.
And I think our engineering department knows where some spot things could be done that would improve the road with a view to ultimate improvement, but stuff that works now, where stuff is failing now.
Absolutely.
So in light of those comments, based on the comments that have been made around the horseshoe, it doesn't seem that there's much appetite to add any of these capital requests to the overall budget. And unless I'm misinterpreting the comments that have been made.
Well, there's lots of appetite.
There's lots of appetite,
but
not enough
there's
cash.
nothing on the plate to eat.
Yeah, there's no stomach for it. That's a great way of putting it. So the other thing that I'm reminded of, I'm tend to be an optimist. I'm hopeful that we're not going to see costs rising at the rate that they have for the last 2 years. Thanks for laughing at me. Anyways, so I'm hopeful that inflation isn't at like 8-9% and maybe be at 2 to 3. And then it's a little easier when looking at doing other projects. However, I'm also hopeful that things like the casino funds that might come in more robust than budgeted will allow us to perhaps tackle this or keep a lower tax rate increase in the future. More importantly, the budget as presented without these items is going to maintain, sustain what we have and not leave things forgotten for years on end, which is what's happened and which has led us to the point we're at. So I'm hopeful that as much as I would have loved to have had these other things added to the budget and been able to fund them to move forward, I still think the budget overall is the step in the right direction. So unless there's an appetite from council to add these ideas, then I might call the question on this particular budget, because I think we're at the end of the budget presentation and the financial plan. The water wastewater separate.
Right.
Or we have more?
No, we can't approve it today anyway.
Oh, no. So, but it's to receive it. Sorry, it's not to approve it. My apologies. I used the wrong term.
Your worship, just one thing at council, we deferred the discussion about the GAN Arena. I don't know if you want to discuss it now, or we could do it January committee of the whole.
I was just going to say, I don't think we're going to get through that in 15 minutes, as much as I would love to start chewing on that. But yeah.
You want us to run through water, wastewater, or wait?
If you think water, wastewater might be able to get done, I'm happy to.
I mean, we could do the same. We can just present it so you have the information, and then over the next couple of weeks, you can ask us questions.
So maybe what I'll do is so the motion that's on the floor right now is by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that council receive corporate services report SR 164-22 presentation of the 2023 operating and capital budgets as information. So if I call the question on this is just us receiving information, and that another subsequent motion will come back to council in January for ratification, and we can have further discussion about budget at that time. It also gives everybody an opportunity to tap into any departmental questions they might have, as well as deal with the treasurer. So if everybody's comfortable, I will call the question on that. Okay. So I will, I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving this report, all those opposed, and that's carried. So that's off the table. With everybody's indulgence, we'll put the water wastewater on, which is moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that council received corporate services report SR-153-22 water and wastewater 2023 budgets and financial plan as information. The council approve increases to the water wastewater rates in accordance with the rate study effective for the January billing cycle. Go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Okay.
And which page are we on?
So through you, this is a whole different separate report and slides that were posted to the agenda for the meeting today, but they weren't in your binder. Sorry, they weren't ready then. So I'll just go through at a high level, I guess, if that's okay. And I have to be honest, I studied the municipal budget last night, and I did not study this one as closely. So even if there are questions, I might have to go away and look them up and get back to you. But if we can put them, maybe the basic numbers out there for you to have a look and just to get a sense of what we're proposing, then I'm happy to bring this forward again in January, and any other information that council wants to request. So the water operating budget is fairly close in line to the 2022 budget in terms of the operating expenses. There are pressures from insurance and other costs, the same as on the municipal side. The rates have been projected to go up in accordance with the rate plan, the rate study that was, I think it's about 3.5% increase to the flat fee for water and wastewater, which I will touch on in a slide in just a sec. The contracted jobs line item on the slide is work that Aqua does, and they have actually quite an extensive plan that they project out 35 years in terms of maintenance and repairs, and some small capital work as well to the water and wastewater infrastructure. So that's a budget for work that they're estimating that they will need to complete next year on the water infrastructure. And then the Aqua contract is our monthly managed services agreement with them, that they manage those utilities for us. On the sanitary sewer operating budget side of the things, it's generally the same. The insurance has gone up a couple thousand. Our contracted jobs amount is smaller, projected for the sewer utility next year. And the budget is fairly close in line to the previous year. For 2023, our capital budget is actually quite small, really comparatively, but it is include the $150,000 to complete the sanitary sewer municipal class environment assessment, which is what is needed in addition to the water one. So we can really get a better handle on what our capital requirements are for the utilities, as right now our estimates are based on high level estimates provided to us in a study. So the next slide just is a summary of the rates. Now I was going to bring forward in January a brief report, which would actually propose to amend the general rates and fees bylaw to update these rates. So I actually have to update that bylaw to update these rates that are included in our general fees and rates bylaw. But this is what we would be proposing to increase based on the rate study.
That rates but study we approved 2 years ago, right? Go ahead, Councillor Cody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. These rates here were established with the old meter system.
Right,
Like the new ones haven't been in place long enough to even get a handle as to what's average, right?
right.
I guess it's hypothetical to ask a question, might they come down? We'll know better next year, right?
Through your worship. So we're going to have better consumption data, which will be great to be able to analyze and help for projections and estimates. But unfortunately, by the time we get to the end of this presentation, you'll see that the financial plan on this for the utilities is also in pretty bad shape. So it will be, I think, a challenge for us to be able to bring the rates down.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move. Oh, Councillor
I
Jameson.
just want to get back on the record once again saying that for the next year's budget, I would really like to see the water wastewater system reflect full cost. Thank you.
Duly noted. Go ahead.
So the estimated capital investment requirements are from the update to the growth readiness study that was done in the village of Lansdowne. So we had a study done, and then I'm not going to remember exactly how this happened, but there was something happened that made us realize that study might not have been 100% correct. So then Director of Operations had the study updated by JL Richards. And these are the updated estimates on what the work is needed to be done to both the water and sewer systems. So right now, this is the best information I have. So this is what I've built our financial plan around. But as I just explained in the council report that was posted on today's agenda, this is very much preliminary as we're waiting for those environmental assessments that the Director of Operations is doing to get better information. And this is the financial plan. And this is where it's good to kind of talk about both of financial plans at once. So just to be clear, the financial plan for the municipal capital budget includes the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund funding every year. This one now includes federal gas tax funding, which is now called, Canada Community Build Fund. So we've allocated that stream of capital funding to the water and sewer utilities because right now, with the work that's anticipated that needs to be done, we don't have anywhere near enough money in our reserves, and or even if we start to contemplate debt, as soon as I include debt in the financial plan, the amount of that we're charging, the rates, the amount of revenue we can bring in based on our current rate structure, we don't have enough money to cover the debt payments. So then every year we just go further in the hole. So we're hopeful that when I'm hopeful that when Dave gets his environmental assessments done, that the capital requirements will hopefully be somewhat less than what we're looking at right now, because right now I'm not even sure how to balance this one. So we will definitely be coming back to council with an updated plan when we get better information.
Councillor Grow.
Just a quick question, and thank you, Your Worship. A quick question, Kate, on that estimated capital investment requirements. where did those numbers come from again? I must have maybe not paying attention.
Those numbers came from the update to the initial study that was completed. And these are directly from JL Richards. So this report was provided to council in early 2022, I believe.
But this is prior to the MECP
That is correct.
being done. So
Yes.
the data that's coming from the MECP will further inform actual costs. These are estimates or guesstimates because we don't have all the information about the status of the system.
Yes, these numbers were based on a study that they had completed for another municipality. So they took those costs and applied it here to give us a high level estimate of what we would be looking at.
I didn't do the addition there, but that's,
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
what are we at? Oh, is this maybe where the 15 million or something came from? Is that about right? 6?
It really comes down to the fact that the province will definitely have to be involved. And I have already had preliminary discussions with Minister Clark to put him on notice that we have not asked for a whole lot over the last 4 years, but not to be shocked when we come forward asking for something significant to deal with this. Just to use some of his own words, we need to build housing to address the issue of housing that is in shortage in this province. It doesn't have to be in Ottawa. It doesn't have to be in Toronto. We have these municipal systems that are in place. We could be definitely assisting in development and bringing more people here, paying more taxes here within our own municipality, but lacking the capacity is the only linchpin. So in which case, if you really want to build more houses and create more stock, we have the land. Bring your money to the table. And realistically, we've got a great planning department and get that through, no problem, but we just need the capacity. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
I'm sorry, just one last question then. Are we being asked this evening to vote on the,
Receive.
or is this just to receive information?
Yeah, we're just looking to present the information again to give council time to review it, because as much as it is separately funded, really, again, like it does, the two kind of budgets do need to be presented, I think, together, and then we can answer questions. And like I said, I need to bring the general rates and fees bylaw back to update those rates. So you can go to the next slide, because actually what you're just talking about leads into the, sorry, the last slide, I guess, I'm maybe skipped ahead, but if you keep going one more. Is really we're stuck kind of in this vicious circle right now where we really need to have more capacity on the system so we can get more users, because we need more users to be able to stabilize the rates. But to get more users on the system, we need to spend a ton of money. So it's a very difficult financial situation for us right now, unfortunately, with the water and sewer utilities. And there's some better explanation, more complete explanation in the council report about the study that Dave was referring to.
This building is not on the system, is it?
Absolutely, it is.
It is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is the last house that's on the system. That house beside us is not on the system, I don't think. And the house across the road is not on the system. So at the end of the day, though, you know, the system was put in place, and there's other small villages within a very short drive of here that have septic systems that are contaminating wells. So, you know, it's a bad problem to have, but a good problem in this, nobody's getting sick. So, and we do know of other instances where people are getting water from other potable water sources because they can't be drinking their own water. So the motion that's on the floor is moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that council receive corporate services report SR-153-22, water and wastewater 2023 budgets and financial plan as information, and that the council approve increases to the water wastewater rates in accordance with the rate study effective for the January billing cycle. So in essence, we're receiving the report and the financial plan, but they are asking for approval on the rate increases that were part of the plan that we already approved 2 years ago. This is falling in line with the plan that we received It was 2 years ago. It was 2 budgets ago.
Right, through you. I guess what I was looking for is direction, and if council wishes not to proceed with what we've approved through that plan, then I wouldn't bring the general, like I wouldn't bring the rates and fees bylaw back based on those updated rates if there was a different direction we wanted to go.
We could also strike that and have it come back in the January to
Yeah.
have it approved at the same time if the council wishes that to
That's
be
fine.
the case. So what is the will of council at this point? Are you comfortable with the increases to the water and wastewater rates, or would you rather have that approved at the same time as the budget? Sorry, I'm gonna go with Lackey, Jameson, Fode. Go ahead.
I'd rather wait, your worship, and do it all at the same time. And it gives everybody a chance to see what we've seen today and be able to get some feedback.
Fair enough. Okay, so who wants to amend the motion to remove and that council approve the, so I've got Lackey and Fode to delete second paragraph. Okay. All those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed? And it carries. No, this is just to receive the corporate service report as information. Because it's coming back anyways. Yeah, it's coming back in the, so the motion, the amended motion now reads that council received corporate services report SR-153-22 water and wastewater 2023 budgets and financial plan as information. All those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay. So so there's a confirmatory bylaw that we have to pass because it was a council meeting. It does not confirm any of our tax rates or anything like that, just that we received the information here at this meeting and that it was an official meeting of council. So the motion comes forward from Deputy Mayor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Gorell, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 22-085, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the corporation of the township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands at its December 15th, 2022 special council meeting. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Last motion of the day, friends, moved by Councillor Gorell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Olkey, that council adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And special council is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.